Hello there. It's January 2026, and a few weeks ago, I got a call from my doctor to say that I was in remission from Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 2. When I was in chemo, quite often I was looking on YouTube looking for vlogs and people's experiences. So I thought when I came to the end of my cancer journey, I would make my own video. So here it is. I've divvied it up into the questions that I was asked most by family and friends sort of towards the end of the chemo. So hopefully it's useful for anyone who's just been diagnosed or is in the middle of chemo, or maybe it's just finished and wants to get nostalgic about it. But here we go. The initial symptoms were minimal. I just had a small lump in my collarbone. Um, and really, I fancied having the morning off work, and I was a bit curious, so I booked an appointment at the doctor. It actually took me a long time to get diagnosed because I had no other symptoms. Often people with Hodgkin's will have night sweats, they'll have lost weight, they'll be really tired. I didn't have any of that. I was in good shape and just felt totally fine. The doctor told me I first went in November 2024 to come back if the lump hadn't gone down, because it could have been anything at that point. I went back in the February, and then he booked me in for an ultrasound, which was in the June, and then a biopsy in the August, and then the diagnosis a couple of weeks later. So the whole thing was quite long, and that's because I didn't have any other symptoms. The diagnosis was quite surprising. Initially, they'd kind of floated around the idea of TB, tuberculosis, which is quite an old school infectious disease to have. But I've been working for a homeless charity, and apparently it's more common amongst rough sleepers, so that was an option. Cancer was always mentioned as like a last thing, like, oh, it could potentially be cancer to any doctor I spoke to. So after the biopsy, I went back up to Bath Hospital and was called in, and a doctor, as we walked into his office, said, "Did you bring anyone with you?" And I was like, what to celebrate the good news with? And there was another nurse in the room, so when there's two members of staff, you kind of know something's up. And the way he was kind of sat kind of raised my eyebrow a little bit. And he asked me, "What do you think it could be, or what have you been told it could be?" And I said it could be TB, could be something else, or they did mention cancer, and he said it is cancer. And you hear it a lot in TV and films and stuff, but when someone says it to you, it's really weird. It's the only word I can think of. Where straight away I'm thinking, I don't know, I'm like, is that me done then? Is that me? I'm just going to be dead when I'm like 34 or 33 or something. And I hadn't heard of Hodgkin's before, and it's quite a long name, so you kind of assume it's quite bad. But then he said it's quite treatable. Treatable is a word doctors often use because they're too hesitant to say, like, mate, you'll be sound, and that'd be unprofessional. But it's very treatable. And then I sat in like a little quiet room for a bit and just cried because I was just really shocked. And then I basically took to WhatsApp to tell everyone. So I was just doing voice notes in groups, like, "Hey guys, weird one, but got cancer." My wife's in America at the time, and because of the time difference, I couldn't really let her know until about 2 PM. But by that point, I'd kind of told so many people, I'd kind of had a bit of rhythm. So actually, when I told her, I wasn't super emotional. But obviously, it's still very hard. And driving home from the hospital and telling my mum was hard, and she was very shocked as well. But then we just got into it, really. I had to wait another 2.5 weeks to find out the extent of it. So you've been given the diagnosis, but you don't know how much, how bad it is. So those 2.5 weeks were very long. I was worried that I had cancer in my brain, or it had spread and I was stage 4, and I didn't even have any symptoms. But ultimately, 2.5 weeks later, I went back into the hospital, and they said it's good news, as much as it can be good news, and that's very low level. I did have 2 lymph nodes, so that did make it stage 2, but the consultant said with the volume of it, like, it's very low level. did you gain weight and did you lose your hair? I'm adjusting my hat now to do the big reveal. So yeah, I, I mean, it was just coming out in clumps, so I just shaved my head. Um, it's not too patchy now. See, it's pretty thin, but it's not too bad. Um, but I'll put a picture in now of what my hair used to look like. So pretty long and pretty thick. But I mean, it's going to grow back, so I'm not really that bothered. Luckily, I think people have said a shaved head kind of suits me. Um, yeah, and I kind of saw it as the more hair was coming out, the more the chemo was working. So I didn't really mind it. I still have my stubble. It's a bit patchy though, so I'm kind of keeping it to a low level, even though some bits could probably grow a bit more. But I've also you'll see I've just pierced my ear a couple of days ago. I think it's just to make my face more interesting and kind of reclaim my body after a few months of people jabbing stuff in me um, without me really having a say in it. So now it's time to like I don't know. It's just at the stud phase, but I'll put a nice hoop in a couple of weeks. Did I gain weight from my jowls? You can see that I have gained a little bit of weight. In the chemo, it was kind of fine because I had stopped drinking, so it kind of balanced it out a bit. I wasn't exercising as much, but I wasn't drinking as much. Um, but I probably in the whole thing, I've probably gained about half a stone, so about 7 pounds, 3 kilograms, something like that. And now I'm starting to burn that off again. Now I'm starting to get fitter. Christmas came and the good news came and I could drink again. So that just all kind of combined into like me actually putting on extra weight after the chemo. But I don't want to be too hard on myself. I've been through a lot. So now it's just getting back into exercising and enjoying like sweating and tiring out with the gym. And it's actually nice being like exercise tired instead of chemo tired. So yeah, too long didn't read. Did lose a bit of hair, not all of it. Still had my eyebrows and did gain a little bit of fat. So when I first went in for chemo, in a weird way, it's kind of a novel experience. So I was kind of quite interested to see what it would be like. And obviously I was keen to get it started because it was the only way I was going to get better was through going through chemo. The centre at Bath is pretty new, so it's quite nice. You go and sit in like a big leather chair, and there's like a wall of them sort of skirting around the whole of the cancer unit with other people receiving different chemos. Mine, I was pretty much there all day, so towards the end of the day, I kind of felt like a straggler because it would kind of get to like 5 or 6 o'clock, and other people had gone home and they'd turned the lights off and other bits, and I was still sat there. So my chemo was ABVD, don't know what it stands for. Dacarbazine was one. Um, Basically, you have a cannula put in. Some people have a PICC line because I only had 3 months of chemo. I think we just put it in straight in, raw dogged it. It was okay apart from the last bag, which is dacarbazine, which is quite a toxic one. That would be for 2 hours, and it would feel like vinegar going up my arm. So my advice would be ask for loads of saline because they will just put it in blinds unless you talk about how much it's hurting. And actually, your experience in that chemo will reflect your experience for like the next 2 weeks before your next round. So if I came in and like my arm had hurt during the chemo, my arm would hurt for the next couple of weeks. Whereas if I had a nice cannula with loads of saline when they're putting the chemo in, it was generally a lot easier. The nurses were all really sound. You kind of just like chatting to them. Also with the steroids, you kind of be a bit chirpier anyway. But I pretty much just sat around, listened to podcasts, would eat some food, do a crossword. So it's almost like being on a plane in a way, but a sad plane. So I'd have my chemo on a Wednesday, and then I'd be on anti-sickness Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So those days I'd kind of be okay. But then Saturday and Sunday would be the days where I was getting a bit more tired, and I was taking more like ad hoc anti-sickness meds to get me through it. They did get harder as they went on, the rounds went on, but the more rounds you have, the more experience you have of what your body likes. So towards the end, I'd be like, I'm not even going to risk going out for a walk or something. I will just stay in bed. I know what food I like on certain days and stuff. So they kind of got a bit easier. In terms of what I did, I made a big list me and my wife made a big list of things I was going to do, which I'll put up now, and you can pause it if you want to be nosy. Some stuff, I mean, it's just random stuff: make banana bread, visit my grandma, go to the coast. But the list was actually so important to me because I obviously wasn't working, but I needed some kind of direction and some kind of deadlines and things to achieve. So all the things on the list I did, just things like making Christmas cards or going to see friends. I wrote 10,000 words of a novel. I'm not going to say it's any good, but I did it. Reading books, because otherwise you will just sit around and just be watching telly. Whereas if it was a rainy day or I wasn't feeling too good, I'd be like, let's do a puzzle and then we can tick it off the list. So I definitely recommend writing a list of things you're going to achieve, and it does give you some direction. Exercise wise, I still managed to go for a walk every day for at least 45 minutes, and between each round, I'd go for a run, usually about 2 miles, nothing major. So I was lucky in that respect that I was still able to exercise. And in sort of the second week after the chemo, I'd be driving and cooking and sort of living half normal life. My mental health was actually very strong throughout, which surprised me. I'm a real crier, but didn't really cry throughout the 3 months of the chemo. The 2 weeks, like I said at the beginning, the 2 weeks where I was diagnosed and had to wait for my treatment plan were very long, and that was emotional, and that was upsetting, and I was crying quite a lot. But when the chemo started, I was very forward thinking, sort of looking to the future and just being like, just get it done, let's just do it. So I had like strong mental health. Like I was germophobic, but I don't think it was irrational. I think I was just being very cautious and wanted to make my experience of chemo like, optimal. And it was during flu season, so I was a bit of a germaphobe when it came to like going to supermarkets or going to the pub. But I think that's more just being sensible. So mentally, I was strong, but physically, I was having random infections. I had like a belly button infection, a toenail infection, just because my immune system was weak. So we'd be going to A&E at like on a Sunday night until 2 in the morning. You got people around you who've been in car accidents, and they're like, What's happened to you?" And you're like, "Oh, I've got a red belly button." I guess that was maybe a bit taxing mentally, just being like, "Oh," you'd ring up the hotline, they're like, "Oh, you need to go to A&E because it can go septic." Sometimes that would be frustrating. But now it's kind of the opposite. Now I've finished chemo, my body is raring to go, and it's really enjoyed running and exercising and just getting back to normal and getting stronger. But now I'm out of it, I feel like now my brain is kind of panting a bit and wheezing and being like, what the hell happened? I don't think I'm anxious or depressed, but I am having to process quite a lot of what happened. Whereas in the moment, I was kind of able to push through with it. But I guess now it's a bit of a come down from the celebration of the good news. Is like, what do I do now? On top of the little infections I mentioned at the beginning, um, when I first started, my mouth was quite sore. So it'd be like if I was eating food that was hot, like temperature hot or spicy or crunchy, my mouth would feel like I've eaten like nettles or something. It was really sensitive. But then I asked for a prescribed mouthwash, and they gave me something called chlorhexidine, and I definitely recommend that as well. That's one of my tips. And after that, I didn't have any. Also, in the first round, my index finger and my thumbs on both hands went very numb, and I was kind of worried that that would get progressively worse. But it didn't really. It kind of got better. I think it was just like an initial thing, and it seemed to have worn off, and now I'm fine again. I think you really learn to advocate for yourself, and whenever you have a problem, you need to ring up and just tell someone, even if it's something small, just so at least you've reported it. Other side effects, well, my hair falling out, and generally getting quite tired. I'd be quite breathless on certain days, but again, I mean, I'd still go out for a walk, but I would feel it. Or if I was doing things like bending down to pick up the washing or something, like I would feel like a little bit breathless. Um, but apart from that, I mean, I was quite lucky in that respect that I didn't have anything too crazy, and it was quite manageable. And like I said earlier, the more the experience goes on and maybe you get a bit more tired and a bit more fed up of it, you do learn your little hacks of how you deal with things and how you deal with side effects. So I was booked in for 6 rounds or 3 cycles, sort of 3 months worth of chemo. But that would be followed by a PET scan. And if there was still some there, I would have had to go back and had more chemo. So when I had my last chemo at the hospital, I didn't really feel like I was saying goodbye to the nurses because I didn't want to jinx myself because there was still a chance that I could come back. And actually, my next round would have been booked in on Christmas Eve, and that would have really sucked. So having my last one, I was pretty ready to be done with it because my arms, they'd pretty much run out of good veins at this point, just because the carbazine was so harsh on my veins. So I've still got little lumps and stuff now. I had a PET scan on the 22nd on the Monday, and that wasn't because, oh, it's a Christmas treat, but more because I was penciled in for more chemo on Christmas Eve and they needed to know. That morning, I was a bit stressed out, or I don't know, I was just sort of a lot going on in my head. So I parked quite far away from the hospital and walked about half an hour in the cold to just ease my mind a bit, which actually made my body very cold. And the room was cold, and I was in t-shirt and shorts. And when your body's cold, it produces something called brown fat. It's got a scientific name, I can't remember what it is, but in your neck, produces glucose that's trying to warm you up. That glucose lights up on a PET scan. So it's also where my lymphoma was. So when I had this scan, I came home and was expecting a call, which is either going to be amazing news or terrible news. And they just said, we're not too sure yet because we think there's fat. We think you've got a fat neck, but it could also still be the cancer. So that day, I'd been waiting around all day to get this phone call, and I couldn't be given a definitive answer. So the next day, they told me a doctor would call me in the morning, and then I got an email being like, the doctor's off. So I had another one call me up at about 4:00, and he said, Mr. Ball, are you sitting down? And I went, oh, for fuck's sake. And he went, oh, it's good news. I was like, why would you open with that if it's good news? But that was it. So in the end, it was actually quite anticlimactic because I didn't get that definitive, like, you're cancer free, and there was like, I don't know, confetti cannons and stuff. It was, we're not too sure. And then they were like, yeah, we think you're all right, actually. So I got to come downstairs and tell my family. My brother and sister, I got to tell on Christmas Day. They didn't know I was getting my results early. So that was cool. So it's been nice doing the reverse of that initial WhatsApp group chats and voice notes and getting to the reverse of contacting people and saying that I was in remission. I'll show you what the scans look like now. So you can see that the before one, there's the 2 yellow sort of suns, and then the one afterwards, you can see their discrepancy of the brown fat. You can see that where the cancer was, there's nothing there. Yay! And what I've learned from having cancer, all the classic stuff really, like life is a privilege, and actually the ability to mooch around and be daft and do pointless stuff, that is the best things in life. I was able to do things in chemo, but it felt very pointed. I was exercising to beat the cancer. I was eating this because it's good for my body, But on New Year's Day, we went for a swim in the sea, but it's like a fancy dress one, and I was stood next to a guy with a lampshade on his head, and we ran into the sea, and it was freezing cold, and I was like, this is what life is about. So yeah, everything's a blessing. Not to sound too cringe, but it's so nice being able to just seep back into my little normal life. In terms of practical things, like don't go out when you're ill. Be so many times I'd be in the supermarket and I would see someone coughing and wheezing who was obviously ill. If you do that, you don't know the person next to you might have a weakened immune system and might actually get very poorly from you going out when you shouldn't, or you should be wearing a mask. So I won't be doing that if I get the flu anytime soon. Another thing I learned is to advocate for yourself. You really have to stand up for yourself, and if something's wrong, you have to put your hand up and tell someone straight away, because no one else is going to do that for you. No one else knows your body like you. And I guess for the most part, how grateful I am for friends and family who were there. You'll find in the first round, a lot of people are messaging you and texting you But by the third and fourth round, when you're kind of in the depths of it, it's actually the best people will still be the ones who stick it in their diary and still remember to text you, even though it doesn't take a lot. It does mean a lot to see that. So yeah, that is the end of my little cancer journey, hopefully. So start to finish, I was diagnosed on the 26th of August, and then I was cancer free. You can't really say that because I don't know what they want you to say. I had a negative PET scan on the 22nd. So almost 4 months to the day, because I think they were both it was on a Tuesday I got the results. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you found it useful. Any questions, put in the comments. Don't forget to link and subscribe, guys. No, I'm not a YouTuber, but hopefully you found that useful. See ya.